And in the month of October already, we've had over 30 Iranians, 35 Pakistanis, over 100 Russians, and over 2,000 Chinese present at that southern border. What are we doing?
So way back when, in 2005, I broke some quite extensive stories on terrorist ties with drug cartels. Yes, I was a young fledgling reporter with lots of great sources. Those stories, the first story actually exposed direct links between cartels in Mexico and the nexus between them and terrorist organizations, both in the Middle East and in Africa. And the concern that sources had that these ties would be the end of our nation if we didn't take care of it. The biggest concern was, and the end of our nation is the way we know it, the biggest concern being weapons of mass destruction. Remember 2005, not too long after the 2001 terror attacks, people were still reeling from 9/11. There was extra added security, extra added concern with good reason for everything that was happening in the United States with regards to our security measures. What was going on at the border? What was going on at the airports? Well, we saw what failures happened prior to September 11th. We see the failures now and the complacency, I think, and I would call it a failure in Israel, but I think it was being complacent, thinking, and I guess we're going to learn more as time goes on, but being complacent meant we, the Israelis, and I'll talk about us in a minute, let their guard down, thinking things were headed in the right direction. And maybe the people should have been more concerned about the fact that the terrorists actually did have a plan in action, that it wasn't about seeking peace as they had thought for the last few years about moving forward, but that the enemy has their say. And that's something that you learn when you're a war correspondent or when you're a troop on the front lines fighting an enemy. The enemy has their say. You could want everything to be good. You can believe in your heart that you've given all of the options to whoever you're dealing with, whatever adversary that you're coming up against. You could believe that your negotiations led to a compromise that made all sides happy. And guess what? The enemy has their say. And that is what I'm trying to get across right here. In 2005, I broke major stories. In fact, for those of you that remember me, thank you so much. I know you're out there. I read your text messages to me and your X messages to me and Instagram messages. And I know that some of you remember my early days at the Daily Bulletin and at the Washington Times and the work that I did there on the border. And I thank you. But for those of you who don't know me, for those of you who were very, very young, like some of my producers who were just young children or little babies then, you wouldn't know about these stories. They're buried somewhere in the internet, in the old archives of the Washington Times and, the Daily Bulletin and the Washington Examiner. But I exposed this nexus because I truly believe we are complacent. We have let our guard down. And even right after September 11th, 2001, I could already see, despite the 9/11 Commission, despite everything that we had been warned about in America, despite the magnitude of the loss of life, that we were not doing what needed to be done. We made life at the airports miserable. But our border was wide open. And so much so that we were complaining back then. I remember Border Patrol agents coming up to me and saying, this is just theater. I feel like I'm living in theater. Now they really do feel like it's not just theater. They believe that they have slipped into an alternate universe and they don't even know where they're at because they're not even allowed to do their job at all. They can't even vet properly the people that they are letting loose onto our streets. And believe me, it's weighing on them and it's weighing on me. I was just telling my producers, and we're going to have Senator Marsha Blackburn on here about this, but I was just telling my producers, how do you think it feels? all these years of writing these stories, and we are in a far worse position than we have ever been in the United States of America. All the way back then, I'm looking at this headline because C-SPAN so graciously had me on their show. Yes, if you want to see this interview with me about all my stories that I broke back then, you could go and put Sara Carter, C-SPAN, terrorists, and drug cartels. And they did have me on there. And here we go. U.S. knew of drug cartel terrorist ties in 2001. Ex-DEA chief says link exploits our weakness. So don't let them tell you that this is new. It is not new. They've known about this for a long time. They've known about this for a long time. My first big story, here it is right here on that: terrorists teaming with drug cartels take on new identities as Hispanics. That was on the front page, upper fold, mind you. I like to say that, of the Washington Times. That was way back in the day when we could say, hold the presses. I was still there during the hold the presses time. I remember that happening frequently during the war when Eli Lake and I, or somebody who was working on the front desk, would have to hold the presses for a story. So this is not anything new. And what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to tell you now is to take a deep breath and think about what is happening far beyond this myopic viewpoint. Think about what our government is doing and the failure of this administration in particular to allow the border to be wide open in a time of such danger, where we are not only threatened by terrorist organizations, and just because we haven't had an attack in the United States, a massive attack recently in the United States, doesn't mean that one isn't being planned. But in a time where we have adversaries like Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, that want to see and exploit our weakness, and that use both the cartels and these terrorist organizations as proxies in a war against the West and against us. And I want you to think about this. Think about what happened to our allies in Israel. Think about what they faced. They were happy. I was there just several months ago. Even though I was there for a border tour, which is incredible that happened, and this happened so close to the trip I took. The Israeli people weren't thinking like, oh, we're going to be attacked by Hamas. They're going to come over the fence. I mean, sure, they probably are very cautious of IEDs, of maybe a group like Hamas or Hezbollah targeting a bus, which is horrific, or a shopping area, soft targets. That's what the intelligence community calls them, soft targets. Where people are out shopping, they're not thinking, they're not watching for the possibility of a terrorist lone wolf acting out on their own. It's just the risk we take of being free, right? Those are the risks we take. But they never, ever expected people to come over those walls with parachutes, with weapons in their hand, cut through the fence lines, and immediately begin the carnage and barbarism that happened. Complacency. Think about what it's like in the United States right now. Think about the government that we have. Think about how this administration has basically neutered our federal law enforcement officials on the border, our intelligence agencies, our DEA. Think about what is going on right now, our ATF, our FBI, although I have my bones to pick with the FBI, but there are a lot of people in the FBI that are, working, on the ground, or the boots on the ground, that are fighting terrorism still, and hopefully not just domestic extremism, which is absolutely fundamentally, unbelievably ridiculous. We're patriots. We want to protect our nation. We want to protect this land because this is it. This is it, folks. This is it. Once this is gone, the way we know it, once our Constitution is trampled on, once there is an enormous attack, God help us, with a weapon of mass destruction, and that is highly plausible. Yes, it is. Highly plausible. That border has been wide open. Once that happens, life will change again forever. Why not be on the offensive? Why be on the defensive? We cannot allow this to happen. And that's why I have Senator Marsha Blackburn on the show. And she's going to talk to us about the new statistics as well. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and these numbers were released Saturday, 169 people on the FBI terror watch list were encountered between the ports of entry at the southern border, meaning they did not want to just come through and, turn themselves in. They wanted to sneak through. In the past 12 months, a number that exceeds not only the fiscal year of 2022's record-setting total of 98, but the last 6 fiscal years combined. And that's in a Fox News report. And by the way, Tom Homan and I, we are with Border 911. It is a nonprofit. We are also on our board is Rodney Scott, the former head of Customs and Border Protection. We have Mark Morgan with DHS, amazing group of people, Victor Avila and Jason Jones. And we are working together to expose these horrors that we have been, that we've been exposed to by our government, and our national security is failing us as a nation. With these encounters between the ports at the northern border included, I want you to think about this. The total for fiscal year 2023 was 172. This is very, very frightening. I'd like to welcome Marsha Blackburn in a minute to the show because she will be able to explain to us in detail. She's up on Capitol Hill. She is getting the firsthand accounts from the other senators that she's working with and from her own state as well, and the concerns that she has about this, right? And about what can potentially happen in the United States with so many known gotaways that are all over our country. And a good portion of them, believe me, are here. They're criminals. Some of them are connected to terror organizations. And I truly believe, based on the people that I have spoken to, the sources that I am in communication with, and the people that I have spoken to, that there are sleeper cells in this nation waiting for the word to target us. But first, I want to talk to you about HelloFresh. I would not be able to bring all these incredible guests like Senator Blackburn and others onto the show without having great sponsors like HelloFresh. And HelloFresh helps me. I'm so busy all the time. It's crazy. I feel like I hardly have time to breathe. So when I want to spend time with my family, quality time, I don't need to worry about going to the grocery store, right? All I have to do is say, you know what? I've got HelloFresh. It was delivered right to my front door, and we can cook together as a family, and I don't even need to go anywhere. So when I'm home, I'm home. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your front doorstep. You just can't beat that. And like I said, it skips trips to the groceries. You'll taste all the freshness of fall in every single bite. I'm so excited. I'm waiting for my new package to arrive on Friday. Yes, very excited about that. I even added extra. I added the nachos because my family just loves that, especially when they're watching sports. They have this entire nachos meal package with everything you can imagine. And everything is fresh. And that's what I love about it. You can also feast on desserts like apple cider cake with caramel sauce, and please a crowd with appetizers like barbecue pulled pork and nachos, just like I said. Right there, and the nachos. And don't forget the mini pumpkin cheesecake, perfect for a me time treat. I want that. That's the one that I want. It's tasty. It's fun. You can cook with your family. They have family meals. They also have, meat and veggie meals, depending on what your diet is. They also have vegetarian meals. So it doesn't matter. Whatever you like to eat, they can make it happen. Go to HelloFresh.com, 50 Sarah Carter, and use code 50 Sarah Carter for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, save 50% plus free shipping at HelloFresh.com/50 Sarah Carter and use code 50 Sarah Carter. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. So grateful to have Senator Marsha Blackburn on the show with me now. You represent the great state of Tennessee. And Senator, I haven't had a chance to talk to you since the horrific attacks in Israel. I was just in Israel several months ago, and I traveled along every border area. I was, in fact, in some of the kibbutz that was targeted by Hamas, and the horrors that happened there. I still can't even get to sleep at night thinking about what these innocent people and children have been through. And I want to give you an opportunity to address that, because I'm sure it's affected you the same.
You know, Sarah, yes. And we have had so many Tennesseans. We had 85 Tennesseans that were over there that we helped to get out of the country. We have other Tennesseans that have ministries there in the West Bank in Judea. And we are in contact with them. And it is so important for us to realize this was a terrorist attack on Israel. And you've got Iran, and they're funding these terrorist organizations. You have some of the countries in the Middle East that really do not want peace in the Middle East, and they did not want to see a reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And so they launched this attack. This attack was well planned. It had been carried out or planned how to carry it out by Hamas. And we know that much of the support and the planning, the supplies are given to Hamas every year by Iran. And it's why it is so vitally important that we freeze the $6 billion from that ransom payment. That would be a way for Joe Biden to send a message that, you know, we're going to take some actions. These sanctions need to be put back on Iran so that they can no longer sell that oil. During the Trump years, the maximum pressure campaign was really working, and Iran was producing just a few hundred barrels of oil a day. And they were making a few $1 billion a year on their oil sales. And now they're making $1 billion a week.
Could we sponsor, or could the United States Senate, could somebody say to the president, why don't you take this $6 billion and turn it over to Israel? To the people that have been.
Yeah, I've said that. You know, I've led the push to freeze that $6 billion. I had 20 Republicans on the bill with me, and I've said that expressly. That $6 billion should go to Israel to help pay for the damage that Hamas has caused. This was an unprovoked attack, and I think it's so important for us to realize that, and to realize that these terrorist groups in Iran, they do not want to see peace in the Middle East. And Iran is a part of what I call the axis of evil with Russia, China, North Korea. And we know that they like to see chaos. China's intent on global domination by the time we get to the midpoint of the century. Iran has as one of its goals to get rid of Israel. Hamas, in their charter, one of their stated objectives is to destroy the state of Israel. We have to realize this and be clear-eyed about it, Sarah, because this is something that we have to support Israel. They are they're the democracy in the Middle East. They are our ally. It is important that we stand with them and be certain that they have what they need to defend themselves.
Human super beats. Oh my gosh, do I have a funny story for you? I don't know if it's funny, but it's something about human super beats. Remember, I tell everybody, put your human super beats in your bag, in your purse, in your wallet. You can travel with it. You can do whatever you want with it. Well, guess who found my human super beats? Danny, my husband's lab. He found some of my human super beats. Yes, there were 4 of them. I'm not suggesting that but he loved them. Apparently he loved them because I don't know how he did it as a lab, but he unwrapped each individual super beat and he ate them and left them there for me, licked the little foil clean. And so when I went out, I did not have my super beets. Guys, paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in super beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And now Danny feels that healthy lifestyle because he's exercising and eating human Super Beets. Supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus. Super Beets Heart Chews support healthy circulation. So you not only get blood pressure support, you also get productive, heart healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sara. That's Sara. Get Super Beets, BEETS.com, code Sara, Sara. If you love interviews with patriots like Senator Marsha Blackburn, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. I don't care if it's Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. I'm stunned, and Guy Benson, love him. I do shows with him on Fox a lot, and he posted on Twitter a Harvard poll and he wrote, "I just keep staring at these numbers. A slim majority of 18 to 24-year-old Americans say Hamas slaughtering civilians, quote unquote, can be justified by the grievance of Palestinians. Then 62% of the exact same group agree that the massacre was genocidal. So genocidal, but justified." How is it possible that in the United States of America, we have come to a point where our youth actually believes that what we have witnessed in Israel is okay? And then I'm going to go to you really, because I know we don't have a lot of time, about the warning of what has happened in Israel, I believe is a warning to the United States. But first, that question is, are you blown away by that? I'm blown away as well.
Yes, I find it so perplexing that these college campuses and these professors have pushed this pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, pro-Iran messaging, and these kids that are in college have been drawn to this. I find it just absolutely unbelievable. And quite honestly, I think that this is the reason you've seen so many donors tell these universities that their checkbooks are closed to them, that they're not going to pay for this, and then see such activity on these college campuses. I think it's also why you have some major employers that have spoken up to these universities and said, reveal the names of the students that are a part of these groups because we don't want to hire them. So that is a change. And when you talk about it being a warning to the United States, of course it should be. You have spent so much time on that southern border, and you know what happens there. And when you look at the number of individuals that are on the terrorist watch list, and also in addition to that, people who are persons of interest that have come to the country, they're claiming asylum, and some of these individuals are now in the country. You have the gotaways, and as you know, we've got the known and unknown gotaways, people they can see on surveillance, and then people where they find that people crossed over after they are already in the country. And Sara, you've got terrorists that are, of course, in that number. And in the month of October already, we've had over 30 Iranians, 35 Pakistanis, over 100 Russians, and over 2,000 Chinese present at that southern border. What are we doing? Do we really think all these individuals are coming here for a better life? Are we not concerned? When you have so many people on the terrorist watch list, people who are persons of interest, and they're coming here because the southern border is open, and then you have Joe Biden wanting a supplemental that would put more money into humanitarian aid in Gaza, and we know for a fact that Hamas is stealing that money. They did it last week. They stole supplies, food, fuel, medical supplies that were coming into Gaza, and they're using it for the fighters.
So these non-governmental organizations, very similar to what we're seeing happening at the border, where the money is being allocated, our U.S. taxpayer dollars, by the way, folks, is being sent to groups in Gaza that are being controlled by Hamas. They are taking our supplies, our money. And we see that happening on the border too. It's like to our own demise and to the demise of our allies. And it's infuriating to me. And you're absolutely right. You and I were on the border together. You saw it with your own eyes. You spoke to the ranchers on the border who were telling you, Senator, I'm pleading with you. I've got people coming across my property. They're disappearing into the night. They're disappearing into our nation. Mm-hmm. What about contraband? It's not just the fact that I do believe sleeper cells are in this nation. And I have talked to people in the intelligence community about this. They say there's absolutely no way that they couldn't be. They have to be here because they've taken advantage of this. So we've the great possibility that the sleeper cells are here and just waiting for an activation. What about weapons of mass destruction? What about contraband? Look at how much fentanyl has come into our country. Are you worried about a large scale attack? Tennessee's been through this before with the Chattanooga shootings.
That is right. And Sarah, this is why everyone should be so concerned. When you talk to people in the intel community and they talk about the sleeper cells and they talk about how they wait to be activated to carry out an action, and they will tell you it is not a question of if we're going to have a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. It is simply a matter of when and where. And they're encouraging people to be very watchful and to pay attention, because this is something, and the thing is, when you see these videos of what Hamas did, when you see what they did to the children and how they went into these homes and shot people and took people hostage, these are savages. These are savages that went in there and did that. They don't have any respect for human life. And I think people should be very concerned about this and concerned about what Iran is doing to fund Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and ISIS in Syria, ISIS in Iraq. They should be very watchful about this.
Does it frustrate you? And I know I only got 5 minutes left, but I need to ask this because I know it's got to be going through your mind, as well as other senators that are actively working to protect Americans. But on the one hand, the FBI and our federal government and our federal agencies are saying, hey, everybody, be on the lookout. If you see something, say something, which is important. But they have themselves allowed the border under this administration to be wide open. I mean, Alejandro Mayorkas's job is to protect our country and protect our sovereignty and protect our borders. He's not doing it. The head of the FBI seems busier looking for domestic extremists than he is looking for foreign terrorists that could be operating on our soil. And, we've got Russia and China playing war games off the coast of Alaska, China flying a balloon overhead, and Iran possibly funding as well, Hezbollah that is coming in through our border. Does it blow your mind? Are you kind of like, well, wait a minute, you're asking us to do your job, but you don't want to do your job?
Well, and the thing is, when you look at that axis of evil, their intent is not to wish us well. Their intent is not to compete with us. Their intent is not to partner with us. Their intent is to destroy us. And people should be very clear-eyed and focused when they look at that. When you look at how China is out there bullying Taiwan, bullying the Indo-Pacific nations, when you look at how Russia has gone into Ukraine and how they're continuing to try to expand their territory or put the old USSR back together. When you look at Iran and how they have partnered with Russia and are helping to make drones that are being used in Ukraine against the Ukrainian people, and how North Korea is working on developing rockets. These are things that this administration ought to be paying attention to this. And they ought to be able to admit that these people are our adversaries. Likewise, they ought to be able to admit that Hamas carried out this attack and that we do not need to send aid into Gaza right now. We need civilians in Gaza to leave. We need to get those hostages out. But if you send aid, then Hamas is going to get that aid and they're going to continue to carry out those attacks.
Before you get off, I guess this is my last question. What can we do? What can our listeners do? What can we do to help support your efforts and the efforts of other senators and congressional members to send this loud, clear message to the administration that we are not going to be victims and that we're going to be on the offensive against these terrorist organizations? And
what they can do, they can follow me on social media, and I encourage them to follow me. Keep up with the issues. We need to freeze the $6 billion. We need to put oil, and we need to send that money back send it to Israel. Put the sanctions on Iran for their oil production so that they are not getting the money. Every dollar they get, terrorism and building nuclear weapons. That's where they're putting their money. We need to defund the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. That they employ people affiliated with Hamas. They store weapons and ammo in those UN facilities. We need to stop funding them. Trump did not fund them. Biden has sent them about $1 billion. We need to make certain that anybody that has a visa in the U.S. that has participated in these pro-Hamas demonstrations at these universities, that they are removed. They're deported from the country. And we have different pieces of legislation around all of this. It is important that we get these things across the finish line. And Sara, these should be bipartisan in nature.
I agree. And the fact that it's not bipartisan in nature sends a shiver down my spine. I'm just grateful to God that we have you and others in the Senate that are willing to fight for the American people. And I know it's a tough job up there. You've got a battle on your hands. Hopefully we'll get a House Speaker soon. I don't know. That just seems like it's a never-ending battle. But I thank you for your time, Senator Blackburn. I thank you for all the hard work you do.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Folks, be vigilant. If you see something suspicious, please say something. Don't be embarrassed. A lot of people think they're not going to report something. They think they're just making it up in their mind, and then they regret it later because they realize they could have made a difference. If you see something suspicious, say something. Law enforcement can take over where you can't. It could be a good time to spend some time at the range. I do. I like to get out there with my husband. And in fact, we were talking about that. We're going to be there this weekend. I enjoy going out. It empowers me. I do, just basic target practice. I'm not a hunter. I don't oppose it, but I like to go to the range and I like to practice. And maybe I'll take you with me one of these days. Don't let the terrorists win. Keep living your normal life. Go out with your family, go out with your friends, play with your children, and explain to your kids that, yes, there are some bad people in this world, but there are more good people than bad people, and that together we can make a difference. Our leaders have abandoned their duty to protect you, and that's shameful. I'm grateful to God that not all of them have. We have great people like Senator Marsha Blackburn and others that are fighting the fight, and they're fighting for their constituents and they're fighting for our nation. But we need to make sure that we don't abandon our nation and our duties as citizens, and that we need to take those duties responsibly. And that means each and every one of us doing our part to protect our nation, each and every one of us supporting candidates that actually make a difference. And they need your support, They need your support to do their job. And that is what we need to do, folks. Go to the ballot box, vote for the candidates that will do their best to protect you, to protect me, to protect our children, to protect our families. And please make sure you are subscribed to the Sara Carter Show, and that's free right here. You can do it on your favorite podcast app. It really helps us. We love our advertisers. We love you. The more of you, the more advertising we get. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at scarterdc. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless Israel. And God bless the great state of Tennessee.